Welcome to Office Hours. I am Steve Drost. With me, as always, Will Kaplan. Of course, Will and I both from the Quivr team. What is Quivr? We are the CRM built by financial advisors for financial advisors. And our objective is incredibly simple. How can we help you run your business at peak efficiency? And each episode, we tackle a couple of items that came directly from our users who are trying to do just that, run their business as efficient as possible. Will, we had a very philosophical question arise. This actually didn't come from Office Hours, so I guess my intro technically lied, but it came from a user, and it was early, the early phase on Quivr, and they're doing well, they're doing great, and they had a very simple question that was maybe a little bit complex, and it was the people that are on the platform, what are they doing or what did they do to be as successful as they can? I want to know what the best users of Quivr are doing so I can copy that and follow that and be one of the best users on the platform. So that made us think, right? What do our best users do?
Yeah, sort of what's that commonality? Where are people finding success? And I think this is bigger than just Quivr. I mean, I think this is really true for just financial advisors in general. I mean, I see this same type of thing come up in a lot of different places, like whether you're talking about some of the online forums or some of the places that advisors gather and the questions that they're asking of like, how do you do this? I want to be better. I want to be one of the best. What can I learn? And it reminds me of this, like, I'm going to butcher the quote and I don't even know who to attribute it to, but like the idea that wisdom is learning from the experience of others. I don't have to make this mistake myself in order to incorporate this, little thing that's going to make my life easier and make my life better. And so to me, that's kind of what we're talking about here, which is this idea of somebody else has probably gone down this path before. They've learned something along the way. Can they share that information? Can I learn from that myself so that I don't have to spend all that time? I mean, I had a study group very early on in my career. And one of the things we were trying to figure out was like, how do I fail faster? Like, how do I try new things and learn quickly whether this is working or this is not working so I don't spend like 5 years trying to figure it out only to discover like, hey, that didn't work. Like it was really cool. And I tried, did not work out. And I think this is similar to that. I mean, this is the struggle for being better. It's not an easy thing to do. It takes some humility. And I think that, because we sit at the hub of a lot of different users, we do get some insight into this.
Yeah. And to answer the question, anybody that's listening to this that knows me or has spent any time with me knows I'm not shy to express opinions, whether they're right or wrong. I guess that's for you to decide. But our most successful users have a very clear idea of what they want. They know what they're building. They know where they're going. They know what they want their practice to look like. And that doesn't matter if they're a solo advisor or they got 175 employees. They know what they want their firm to look like, and they essentially reverse engineer their operations. They reverse engineer their firm. So me, again, this is my bias. This is what I did. Before I launched my firm, I reached out to anybody that I heard on the Michael Kitces at Financial Advisor Success podcast that I had any interest in where they were. Like, how did you get here? How'd you get there? I sent 50, 60, 70 DMs on LinkedIn, Twitter, you name it. And a surprisingly high amount of people talk to me. And just like you mentioned, right, wisdom is learning from those in front of you or those before you. And I started asking questions, how'd you get there? And I had a general idea, a very good idea, I'd say, of where I wanted to go. And once you know where you want to go, it's okay, what do I need to do to get there? Right? What do I need to do to what processes or operational, efficiencies do I need to provide the service that I want to my ideal clients? And once you know where you're going, it becomes a heck of a lot easier to reverse engineer that.
And I think it's important to also note that like you don't have to have the complete answer all at once. It could be something as simple as like, I've always wanted a firm where I wanted to be, really good about remembering client birthdays. Like it could be something really small. And once you voice that, like once you write that down and express it, then it just becomes a matter of like, okay, well, what is it going to take for me to do that? Am I really good at keeping track of birthdays? Me? I'm terrible at it. Like I can barely keep track of my own. And so then it's like, okay, I need to figure out how to do this so that I don't rely on myself. I need a system. Okay. And it sort of leads you down that path. And then as you identify the first, then you can apply more and more and more. I mean, when I started working with Salesforce, the only thing I was focused on was, can I get Salesforce to track an IPS for me? That was it. Like it's come a long way from those early days. And obviously we're doing a lot more than that at this point. But like that was where my start was, because I felt like I'm tired of having to type stuff into a document and then print that document and then store it somewhere and do this can be easier. I want this to be easier. I want to be able to source it quickly. I want to be able to tie it into my trading platform. I was using iRebal at the time. I want to be able to, quickly produce all of them when I'm, in an audit. Like, great, I've got my list of where I want to go. Now I need to start talking about how do I get there.
And it's interesting you bring that up because my first big thing was meetings. It was meeting prep and meeting follow up. I strongly disliked the meeting prep process at my prior firm. Good firm. I'm not saying they're not a good firm, but I did not like the manual process mainly because I spent 6 to 7 hours every single Monday building these meeting prep documents and I hated it. And I knew there was a way to automate it. So that's what I did. I started with the meeting module, the version one meeting module, which whew, she's way different than the current version of the meeting module. But right, it started there. It was, okay, what information do I wanna have right in front of me for every single meeting? That's it. I drew it on a whiteboard. I drew it on a sheet of paper. And over the years, I've added things, removed things, changed the layouts, technology's enhanced, improvements have occurred, integrations have gotten better. So that sheet has gotten better and better and better in the system. But that's where I started, right? So you started with IPSs. I wanted to improve my meeting process. And then what happened is it just snowballed from there, right? You made the comment about birthdays. Well, after meetings, I realized that I predominantly work with pre-retirees and retirees. I realized that most of my clients are dealing with the same 5 to 15 things: RMDs, IRAs, Roth conversions, backdoor Roths, Medicare enrollment, ACA enrollment, right? The same 15 things or whatnot that most retirees are dealing with. Well, what was I going to track? If at some day in the future I have 50 clients, that was my big audacious goal, was to get to 50 clients. How was I going to track 50 times 10, 500 things? So then it's like, okay, meetings, I've got meetings where I want them. Now, how can I create that part of the system where I just get told when it's time to do these 500 things? And truthfully, that's where the workflow engine and Archer came from, was that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I knew
And
where I
it's
wanted to go.
it's
I knew what I wanted the system to do for me.
and it's very often born out of a particular pain point. I mean, my pain point was going through an audit where I had, another individual had joined my firm. And so I had some IPSs over here and some IPSs over here. And then I went through an audit and I was like trying to go back and forth. And I was like, I'm never doing this again. And for you, it was the, 5 hours of getting ready for the meeting and just be like, oh my God, I know there's a better way. There's got like I can be more efficient. I can do a better job. And I think a lot of these come from there. And so it really is just kind of like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? And that's really kind of what we're talking about here is this idea of you don't have to solve it all on day one. It is modular. And then at some point, I mean, I remember in like my third, fourth, fifth year, I was like, wow, I've got most of these things exactly where I want them. And it wasn't because I had them all on the first day. It's because I got there. And that's the same. I think that's the same for a lot of the journeys that we do. Like the planning that you do when you first start is not as good as the planning that you do after year 5, year 10. You learn more. This operation stuff is exactly the same. Like you get better at it the more you wade into it.
And you'll continue to improve things, right? Like the media module, we're on probably, well, in my career at least, because remember, I had a lot of versions before Quivr even started. When I first built it my first time on Salesforce in my own environment, and it's probably on version 75, and my onboarding module, right? I love my onboarding module, but I just made a huge change to it recently. Huge. And I realized because the onboarding module was originally for my mom. Then I'm like, wait, I'm being a little too selfless here. This should be helping me as well. So I I added an additional tab that because I call the client after the prospect gives me a verbal yes, I call them to get the information. I'm old school. I think it's a good touch, whatever. If you disagree with me, I'm not going to fight with you on that. But I call the client and I realized that I was bouncing around a bunch of different screens to gather driver's license, socials, all that stuff. Where it's like, wait, why don't I just embed every piece of information I need for everybody, the household, the client, and the spouse on one page? I fill all of that out. I just build the IPS record. That way my mom knows what, right? I just made it better. It took me a couple hours. I looked at my mom and my mom's like, this doesn't change anything I do. She said that. I'm like, good. That was my hope. Like it'll make a little thing easier, but like, right. So even when you think you've got it all figured out, there's always room to improve, right? It's like you're never going to have it perfect on day one or I'm on day like 1500. It's not going to be there. But if you know where you're going and you know what you want the outcome to look like, you're going to know how to build it, right? Will, before we were recording this, you used cooking as an example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you're making Thanksgiving dinner. Well, what kind of turkey do you want? Do you want it, how do you cook a turkey? Well, you can fry it. My personal favorite is actually sous vide into the green egg. If anyone's out here, I never sous vide a turkey. I highly recommend it. But right, how do you want to cook it? Maybe you have people that can't eat sugar, so you can't put a brown sugar based rub on it. I don't know, making stuff up, but you have to know like what you're trying to do and what you want the sides to look like. What kind of stuffing are you going to do with the quick little box? Are you going to make the bread and cut it up? Right? You have to know what you're trying to do then the recipe, right? The recipe is going to come too. You follow that recipe and then you make it. And the first time you make something, right? Maybe it's good, maybe it's not so good. But the next time you make it, it'll probably be at least a little bit better, right? And maybe the third or fourth time you make something, it's right where you want it, and it's no different.
And I think it's an iterative process. It's this idea of what can I tweak? What can I not tweak? I mean, we have this like probably, I don't know, 50, 60-year-old recipe for Italian meatballs and that has been passed down through my wife's family. And we kept doing it and repeating it and this whole thing. And we got to a point where like it was always a stovetop recipe and the sauce would scorch on the bottom. And I was like, I'm done. Like it's too hard to like just dial in the temperature perfectly. I'm putting this in the oven. And now, like, it basically does the exact same thing. We cook it nice and low for a long period of time. Sauce has never, I mean, the sauce has not scorched in years because we had this recipe and we run into like this little bitty thing and this like rough point. We're like, well, how do we fix this point? It's the same thing. Like, it's this idea that you've got, this recipe. What are the requirements? What are the conditions that I need to be mindful of? How do I make this easier? How do I make it better? And that's what we're doing here.
But maybe, and maybe, a couple generations ago when the meatballs were getting made, maybe ovens weren't as good. Maybe they tried the oven and maybe the oven didn't work. Convection ovens, what I've been told is they actually shoot up and down right now by 15 degrees. So if you set your oven to 400, it'll go to 415, cool down to 375, go to 415, cool down to 375. Well, maybe back then they didn't do that or they couldn't hold a temp so maybe they tried the oven and it didn't work. And now, 3 generations later, ovens are better. That's no different, right? 5 years later, technology is better. Improve your systems because what you made at that point in time might have been the best that you can do at that given point. But technology changes, your skill set changes, your team changes, things adapt, and then you can go back and improve them, right? But as long as you know what you want the outcome to be, I am quite confident that any user of any piece of technology, granted that the technology is adequate, you should be able to learn that tech and reverse engineer it. It's just a matter of, are you willing to put the time in?
And Steve, I think that there's like a probably an entirely additional office hours that we could talk about this little addendum to as well. But this idea that like, how do we do this at our firm? Well, we do it this way. Why do you do it that way? We've always done it that way. How often do you and I hear that? We hear that all the time. And a lot of times it's like, well, there's other ways you could do it that might, and so some of it is just being willing to sort of, let go a little bit of the way that we've done it and consider that there's other ways that you like it doesn't have to be done that way and and to your point, like technology changes, operations that like the custodians might change, like things, it's an evolving world and you have to be able to kind of set aside well, that's just how we do it to really be able to keep up with like the best practices.
Well, and when my mom and I were updating the onboarding module, there were a bunch of fields. I'm like, are you using this? No, delete it. Wait, you're doing this way? Yeah, that's not your fault. I told you to do it this way, but that's dumb. We're going to do it this way
Yeah.
now. What do you
We're,
think?
we're,
Just
we're going to
that
make it
is way
easier.
better. Perfect. Okay. Like, right. You don't look at a process for a couple of years and see how everyone interacts with it and you make it better, right? Again, the objective doesn't change, onboarding a client as efficiently and smoothly and quickly as possible. But the steps that we take to get there are going to evolve and change and grow with us. But as
You
long as
learn
you
along
are
the way.
consistent, yeah, as long as you're consistent on what you're trying to build, then I'm quite confident that Quiver will be able to help you get there. Now, will it take some time? Sure. Nobody became a great cook the first time they made that stuffing or those meatballs or that turkey. But if you're willing to do some research, figure out what you want the turkey or stuffing to be like, you're willing to read a few recipes, ask, me and you, I'd say we're fairly experienced operational chefs. Ask us for questions, feedback, advice, implement that, right? Take that back to your team, tweak your process, improve it a little bit. You're going to be successful. It's going to happen. And if it's not, then I don't know what to tell you because it will work. But that's a wrap. I thought it was a really good question. What are the people on your system doing that are making them the most successful as possible, and knowing where you want to go, and then having the mental fortitude to figure out what you need to get there. That is without a doubt the number one answer. But that's a wrap. Good stuff as always. If you are a Quiver user and you're struggling with this, whether it's you don't know where you're trying to go or you don't know how to get there, believe it or not, that's an office hours conversation. Again, you might not agree with everything we say, but we will give you honest feedback based upon our personal experience, then also the experience that we've gathered from working with hundreds of advisors on this platform and just networking with hundreds of advisors through our career. If you're not on Quiver, that's okay. Remember, everybody makes mistakes and nobody is perfect. But remember, it's not too late. Come hang out with me, come hang out with Will, schedule a demo, and see what Quiver can do for you and for your practice.